Welcome to the mindful musings of two spiritual mamas. We are Alicia
and Shelby,
here to share our 20 years of authentic friendship, life experiences, and acquired wisdom. Infused with love and intention, our episodes will inspire those who are ready to shift their soul path into alignment with its divine purpose.
We will discuss alternative approaches to life's traditional pathways, leaving you with tools in your spiritual toolbox to navigate everyday moments. Knowing and embodying the empowered self on a daily basis is one of the most valuable practices you can adopt. Understanding that you are surrounded by a network of support, both physically and spiritually, will carry you into the next phase of your divine purpose.
You are not alone on this journey. We recognize we're on a spiritual path, navigating our day-to-day lives, and in this podcast, we'll share with you our organic thoughts as we grow and blossom together.
Welcome to Two Spiritual Mamas. This is episode 15, and I am Shelby.
And I'm Alicia.
And today we are going to talk to you guys about unconditional love. Unconditional love, unconditional everything. But before we do that, we have to talk about conditional love and conditional relationships.
Unconditional love it's really hard to talk about because it's actually the of conditional. So I think we need to start with conditional and what it means to have so many conditions on our love, so many
expectations, boundaries, societal expectations. I mean, we talk about sovereignty so much and intuition and being your own self, but that's not the normal. It hasn't been the normal for a lot of people ever, for many, many centuries. So there's going to be a lot of things you run into when you do start to want to be in an unconditional relationship and unwinding.
Of course, it starts within. So looking at how we love ourselves without putting conditions on our love, on our acceptance of ourselves, and letting go of the story of not being worthy or needing to prove your worth to receive love. That's a condition, right? That's what we're talking about.
Here, let's start with us. let's start with the inside. Yes. How do you establish what is your acceptable path? I start with honesty. In the past I've had dishonest relationships. I've had where I felt I had to not say things because that would disrupt the relationship too much. And then, of course, I realized this is not a good thing to keep inside. This is making me unhealthy. And so you learn to be honest, and honesty is not easy.
And that's one of those conditions, right? If you can't be honest because you fear not being loved, then that's conditional.
Yes, you have it, darling. You have it.
It's a hard one. It makes me squirm a little bit because you're like, oh yeah, I've done that. This happens.
Yeah.
But we have to love ourselves enough to want to have those relationships with ourselves and with others in that vein of honesty and truth, and have those healthy boundaries. So one of the things I like to look at is control. Like, that's my biggest thing. It's the most conditional element of love, is feeling like you're being controlled, or you need to control a part of yourself because all of you is not accepted, because
it's so wild. That's my wild side. It's not accepted. It's not appropriate,
all of those words. Exactly. Appropriate. What a good word for conditional love in society, right? That's not appropriate. We tell our children sometimes, like, that's not appropriate. Well, sometimes children teach us the best of that sort of awareness of freedom and acceptance.
A minute ago, I was thinking of the word blind spot, and knowing that sometimes you personally have a blind spot for your own relationship because you're afraid of that um, being too wild or too unaccepted. So you just have talked yourself into tucking that, oh, it's way back there and I can't see it anymore. It's in the blind spot and I don't know it's there, but you're like, no, it's still there. You know
And
it's still there.
those blind spots are cool to I like the way that you say that, because a blind spot is something you're unaware of. And in my meditation this morning, I was thinking about the should do's. We should do this, we should do that. Those are conditions. Those
Mm,
are those controlling boundaries. I don't like to call them boundaries. I think well, I guess we call them controlling boundaries versus healthy boundaries,
sure.
right? Controlling is restrictive,
Hmm.
and a healthy boundary is sovereignty, like you mentioned at the
Yeah, it's
beginning.
built on honesty. It's built on open communication.
But those should do's are ways in which we don't understand. It's a blind spot. We don't know where those come from. A lot of
Mhm.
times if you think of it, and this is like my biggest goal for my shifting my perspective, is to take the word should out of my vocabulary. So,
Yeah.
number one pro tip here: take should out of your vocabulary. It makes a world of difference. So, when you do notice you think you should do something, ask yourself, who says I should?
Mhm.
And do I really want to? Is this something I need to do for what my values are, what I believe, what I want to do? And the same goes for love. If you feel like you should act a certain way, be a certain way, do something specific, that could be a condition to receiving love or feeling lovable. And that's
Yes.
a big blind spot for so many of us, because we don't recognize that those conditions are built into our society. They're built into our
Mhm.
family structures. You and
Mhm.
I both had really loving families, and we still have our challenges with our upbringing, right? Like there's
Sure.
just karmic patterns, there's things that
Mhm.
you come in needing to learn. And as wonderful as we are personally as parents, that we try to be, there's still going to be issues. Our kids are like, you didn't do this right. That wasn't
Mm,
very nice and loving, or whatever. And we're all just doing our best. So
sure.
being accepting and grateful that, we are doing our best is core foundation for this conversation as well.
Yes. But I do think it's so important to start to identify the subtle conditions that we all live under, through, inside of, that we don't realize are conditions,
Yeah.
that you're like, oh, it doesn't actually have to be that way. Um, and I can't even think of an example right now, so maybe you can, but like checking in with yourself, does this resonate with me? Does this feel like my truth, or am I doing this because I'm a wife and that's what wives do, or because I'm a mom and that's what moms do, you know?
That's the roles that we wanted to
Yeah.
bring up, and the expectations of roles. And marriage is a big contractual role blueprint, paradigm that we'd like to get into as well. So the roles of relationship, the roles of, being a partner, being a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever. What are the agreements that society believes we should do, should be, versus what do you really want to do? What makes you feel good?
Totally.
How,
And how exciting, like I'm in this place right now where I'm single and I am giving myself permission to redraw my blueprint of how I'm going to move forward with my life, and plus as we all experience, our children grow. So there's never like a steadfast. They're always changing. So things are always changing, and I am slightly addicted to change. I love fluid movement. I love release and purge, but it's exciting to realize that I get to decide on my own almost where my comfort zone is, and where do I want to ever live with someone again, or do I want it to just be a couple nights a week, or I don't know yet. I haven't decided. I'll let you guys know. But it's so cool to and obviously I'm very fluid. So if I have these ideas and then I walk into a relationship, well, then that's conditions and I can't do that. But I have to at least know what my foundation is to say, this is what I think feels good to me. It's a solid truth. My body resonates when I say these things. So
And then you need to test it out.
and then I gotta test it out.
And
Oh,
see how that feels and see how the other person responds to it and see, because that's loving as well, to not just be focused on ourselves, but being loving. Yeah. So the idea of, yes, we want to be unconditionally loving to ourselves, not judging ourselves,
mhm,
not getting stuck in our own story, having
mhm.
this unconditional acceptance of who we are, our worth, we could go on and on. And when you're in relationship with anyone, a child, a friend, a lover, a partner, a parent, you also want to take into consideration what their needs are.
Mhm.
And if you have conflicting needs, conflicting desires, it doesn't mean that it's conditional. It just means that you might need to get creative to fulfill the needs of both people, right? It
Mhm.
might be a flexibility around timing, or
Mm.
um, being apart versus being together, getting certain needs met. One of my favorite lessons and books out there is about nonviolent communication. So there's a whole NVC community, there's books, there's programs you can, do trainings in this. I've done a few classes. I've read the book. I follow a newsletter of women here in Portland that is amazing with giving, tips on this constantly. And a lot of it is checking in with yourself and noticing what your needs are. And I think this is so important in this conversation because the conditions that we put on ourselves or that we feel are put on us from the outside don't take into account that fluidity that you're talking about and what our current needs are versus what someone else's needs are, and how to get those needs met without it being control over one
Yeah.
another, right? Like restricting yourself, restricting someone else. We've talked about it in past episodes. The other book, Conscious Loving, that I love and recommend, they talk a lot about conditional love versus unconditional love, and how do we put up boundaries of, this is what I want, these are my needs, I'm not going to be too flexible on this because I know for myself this is what I need, versus pushing someone away, no, you can't do that, and having control over them or trying to protect yourself. It's This is a complex issue. This is a
It
complex
is. It
topic.
is. It is. So let's, because you kind of triggered something in my mind. When you were a child, how were you raised? Were you raised with compliments? Were you raised with conditional compliments?
Or
Was it
criticism,
or
outright
criticisms? Yeah.
negativity.
So you carry that into your future relationships, and it is interesting as we step into new relationships with people to recognize your own patterns, that I want this person to tell me I'm beautiful, or to tell me I did a good job, or to recognize that I did something right. And it kind of is interesting to go back and say, well, why do I feel this need when I know I'm sexy as all heck, and I'm really talented in what I'm doing, and I'm rocking the world? Like, why do I need someone to tell me that? And so it just gives you the opportunities, I guess, to question your own blueprint again.
Yeah.
Maybe get the eraser out, or because we all have ability to erase and redraw. Like, we're not doing this in a permanent marker, people. you know, the power of the eraser.
Yeah, you can even go back and rewrite your story from a different perspective, especially
Mhm.
as, and I'd like to take what you're saying about, how were you treated as a child? What do you understand as love? How do you see it as a pattern? To then saying, I am the parent to my own inner child,
Mhm.
and I can give myself that reassurance, those positive affirmations. We talk about love languages.
Yes.
And acts of service is up there pretty high for both of us because we're single moms, and that's a big one, right? We need help, we need support. But there's also words of affirmation. And I found throughout my whole life, that's been my number one. I am a Leo, so I do like compliments, but words of affirmation it has been my number one love language. And my partner, as much as he shows me acts of service and is wonderful in so many ways and totally gives me compliments, it's just not as much as I'm used to or would say
You're
is
like,
my
fill the jar,
optimal.
buddy.
And I'm
Fill the
like,
jar.
he knows this. We've talked about it. I don't think he would mind if I bring this up, but because I'm working on it from the inside out. And
Yeah.
now what I'm doing is looking at my inner child. Does she need those reassurance? And why does she need that? And I look at my childhood and feeling worthy and being taught to trust my own inner guidance and how that got clouded or confusing and why right now does my inner child feel like she needs so much positive affirmation?
Mm-hmm.
When I'm the parent to my own inner child, I can just give that to myself anytime I want. I look in the mirror and I say, damn, you're sexy. Yes. And
Mm-hmm.
you're rocking it. And all the things you said, like powerhouse, feeling good. And also remembering that there's a tender place inside of all of us that wants to be loved, that needs to be
Yeah.
loved, and
Yeah.
giving that love to ourselves as if you are the best parent in the world to your own inner child, the adult to guide the way, the example of what true love in its purest form, in its, no conditions form
Mm-hmm.
truly is. And I believe that's, like we were going to say from the beginning, this is a conversation about love through the lens of the divine. How do you love yourself
Yes.
the way that spirit
The divine sees you.
truly loves you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know I've spoken to this before, but the moment that I was told by some of my gurus that I had these divine, I don't know what you want to call them, angels or spirit guides with their pom poms. And they were like, go girl, you got this. It was like, oh, I have a whole team of cheerleaders. And, it was translated as cheerleaders. They're not really cheerleaders. That's so funny.
But
Let's just laugh about that.
divine cheerleaders, I love it. And same, right? Right. Be your own biggest fan. Be
Yeah.
your own
Yeah.
cheerleader.
But that really helped me settle in and go, I don't need to seek compliments from anybody because I'm the only one who legitimately sees all the things that I do in a day.
Yeah.
No one really can follow me around unless it's go to work with Shelby day, and that's just ridiculous. But then spirit sees you too. And when I really understood that, it just alleviated a lot of desire for me to be looking for outside affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
And it settled me down so much that I could get to work a little, not, I could get back on my path. I should say, I don't want to call it work. So that's a nice feeling, and that's self-love, and that's unconditional self-love, that I'm on my path, so
You believe in you.
I believe in me.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because we can talk about this because we've done so much work on this subject, feeling worthy of love,
Mm-hmm.
loving ourselves so much that you feel secure in yourself. You feel confident that you can do anything you set your mind and heart to do. So, what else do we need to say about loving yourself and having this unconditional acceptance, feeling lovable? I loved the
Yeah.
roles and feeling like,
Yes.
even let's bring up mother, since that's the easiest for the two of us. We've got kids. A lot of our listeners are mothers or play that role of motherly.
Yeah. That savior, mother, caretaker. I think what we wanted to say was that what is the blueprint or the expectation of that role? And do you agree to do things inside of that role because it's been done before for so long? Or is it an authentic yes from your soul, from your heart? Or are you just doing it because it's expected? And that's the unconditional versus conditional. And it's not that we're going to start saying, I will not bring you to soccer practice.
Or cook dinner or
yeah. But the overindulgence, that, oh, I'm the mom, I'll take care of it. It's like, you're allowed to say that doesn't resonate and doesn't feel like I should be obligated to do that. So have the conversation, whether it's with your partner or your children, and say, this is where I feel my role begins and ends. And that is bleeding. I'm leaking. When you ask me to do those things, that makes me leak and I'm not able to get that energy back. So let's figure out a better way.
Yes. That's wonderful. Open up the communication to the people in your life that you need to share the previous expectations and update. We always talk about this, update each other. This is my new awareness around this topic. This is what's making me feel so tired at the end of the day. I really could use more help with this because I don't want to be the only person responsible for feeding everyone. I love to cook, and sometimes it's just too much and I don't have the energy for it. And we call the nights when mom doesn't cook or we don't go out and get takeout, catch as catch can. Like whoever can catch their own food, like you just go to the fridge, you go to the cupboard, you figure it out. It's like leftovers night, or it's, microwave dinners, or I don't know what, but it's catch as catch can.
Yeah, that's funny.
So some nights I'll just claim it and be like, okay, tonight everybody's on their own. I don't have it in me. And it's been set up as an part of our, what would I say, like the workings of our family unit, that's acceptable. I'm loved just as much when I cook dinner as when I don't, right? And so I don't even need to worry about it. And that's where we're talking about, that's unconditional love, loving yourself enough to speak up, feeling supported by those around you in an unconditional way. That doesn't mean that you have to do all the time, certain things, certain ways, say things certain ways to be loved.
That's a huge one. And for me personally, because I work every night, so I don't cook dinner unless I do it in the day. And that doesn't happen often because I haven't got that together yet after so many years. But you're right. Like there's nights that I have to, and my kids, 2 of them have driver's licenses now. So I know, I'm like, you're not starving here. I show them where there's the spare cash. I'm like, if you guys want to go out and get some food or go grocery shopping yourselves, like there's a whole freedom to their level of capability now. But I still sometimes feel bad that I didn't cook dinner. And so this is where I need to stop and say, I provided you with car, with money, with capability. I'm working.
And
right?
you've made it a choice because you have other priorities that had been more important earlier in the day, some self-care, some overworking, whatever it is that you're choosing to do. And that's the should do's, and that where you start to feel bad and recognizing, why do I feel this way? I chose to not cook dinner for the week on the weekend, or, pack lunches for everybody, or whatever the expectation is outside or from within. Big part of this conversation around food and our children is also empowering them to be self-sufficient in lots of ways. And I do think that over the last 100 years, we've gone through so many different blueprints of these roles. Pre-World War II, women had a very specific role in our society and in the home. And post-World War II, women were in the workforce and we were doing multitasking everything. And now we're in a very empowered place where we get to choose, and there's men staying home at the families, and there's all this fluidity, and we're trying to figure it out and understand it. And one of the places I see that we need to focus is empowering our children for this next generation of how they're going to operate in society and in their own families moving forward, and doing their own chores and feeding themselves and being self-sufficient at a younger age. I think, it's been a little too soft throughout the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s, where you've got a generation of next generation children that didn't learn a lot of the life skills of how to take care of themselves because it was done for them. Because I think the mothers and fathers believed it was their responsibility to take that on, and it
Totally.
was a should do for them. And then they actually didn't give the tools to their children. I know a man my age, actually, friend of mine, who just doesn't have the wherewithal to feed himself, nourish himself well. And he recognizes it. It's a mother wound. And there
Mm.
was issue there back then. And it's multi-layered, but it's good to recognize where we come up with these challenges from our childhood and our life, and how we can not pass those on to our children.
Yes. I agree with everything you said. It's so important. Breaking the ancestral lineage too, you know.
Yes. There's a lot of ancestral healing going on right
Yeah.
now in the world. I think it's a good energy to tap into.
And I think part of why we even do these podcasts is because the world is changing so quickly, it seems like. I mean, of course, this is the only one I'm currently in, this this life. But it does seem like what you were just talking about, at least back then, there was a very strong blueprint. Not that I agree with the blueprint, but it was very dictated in a way. And so now there's such a open book and people are making it up. And it gets daunting because you're like, I think I'm doing it right, but not anyone is really doing it the way I'm doing it. So that's why I think it's so important that you and I talk about what is the truth meter, and the truth meter is you know, that resonation, that intuitive, bone chilling, yes, I'm in alignment, so I don't really care if it's never been done like this before. This is what feels good to my soul, and my children were born into my soul circle, so then it's okay. And then you just move forward with confidence and with clarity.
It's believing in that greater plan that the children came in to learn specifically from you, with the way that we are living, changing, and growing, and teaching them this evolution. It's such a
Absolutely.
beautiful thing that's happening. I really appreciate all of our listeners who are following along and reflecting on their own lives. And
Yeah.
it's such an honor to be able to create these wonderful outlets of
Yes.
conversation with you, and then to
I know.
feel so received.
Yes. And I love just talking about it because it almost gives me a more clear focus throughout my weeks to then walk in that path, walk in the light of the two spiritual moments. So I love it.
Yay, exactly.
Yay. So I wanted to shift into some of the less desirable conversation about like entrapment and sabotage and abandonment and that like fear.
Fear and
That
trauma.
Yeah, fear and trauma. Like when you're in a relationship with someone who is so rigid and they are so like they physically and chemically and psychologically don't have the ability to see things beyond their own set boundaries, and you are trying to become this sovereign human being who's being intuitive, and it's just not, you're going to come into, you're going to headbutt, you know, and you're not going to be able to shift them because it's just physically, I don't want to say impossible, but some people I've learned over my studies with our spiritual midwife, you just have to let go of that expectation. Okay, let's start with this. People like us, we want to heal the world. We want to shine the light and shine everything and say, come on, everybody can do this. And I have had to learn over time that I can't walk into a relationship that's called conditional love, that I think I'm going to change you. And so for me to have to accept that some people don't want to change, they're not interested in change, this is how it is, this is the as is clause, and it's not changing.
It might not be their life path.
Right. So what I've had to understand is with those people, they are going to want me to stop shining my light. they are going to sabotage my thoughts and my emotions.
Or try to control you to fit into
Yeah.
their box.
And keep reeling me back in so that I'm underneath their roof of rules,
Yep.
so that they feel the empowerment and what it's actually is
Power
entrapment,
over. Yeah.
power over. And so just being aware that that dynamic exists and that you can learn to recognize it. And the hard part, I think, Alicia, is when these are people that you authentically love
Mhm.
wholeheartedly.
And
And you just have to go, oh, dang it.
I have walked away from relationships like that. I certainly wanted to fix, heal, and save in past relationships.
Oh my. Sorry.
And I unconditionally loved those men.
Mhm.
Unconditionally loved them. Saw their flaws, loved them anyways. Saw their rigidity, loved them anyways. But it wasn't healthy for me in my
Mhm.
expansiveness to be in that partnership under those conditions and rules. It just
Yeah.
wasn't what my soul needed to flourish. And it didn't matter how much love I poured into the relationship, but really it's about the self love
Mhm.
to see what you need to grow, what you need, and how you want to be loved in relationship.
Mhm. And as you and I talk about a lot, how many interactions do we have in the world? What do I say? It's like showing me what not to do. You know, like when I was younger and I worked at so many gymnastic schools, some of those schools taught me how I didn't want to run my gym. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, you're like, oh, thank you for showing me that. That's not a resonation, you know? And so we need the contrast and we're thankful for the contrast.
I love hearing you say it like that. I do just love the contrast. And then this brings me back to it's about fear and it's about trauma. And some of these relationships I've been through were fairly traumatic, not to the most extreme of terrible violence or sexual assault, or I haven't been through that personally, but I've been through my own level of trauma and relationship and controlling narcissism, trying to love someone that had a very strict abusive way of trying to show love. And the big thing there is trauma is trauma. And it's also part of the contrast. It's part
Mhm.
of the divine plan. And we have to caveat this and say we don't condone any violence or abuse in any
Mm-mm.
way, but we do see and understand how it creates growth and how it can affect good, positive change in the world. I want to say, I don't know if this is too much, but I want to say thank you to George Floyd
Mm.
for being such an example for change. It's a
Mm.
terrible, horrible thing that happened. I'm so glad we're going in the right direction now because of it. But I support equality and love and support of all beings and those people who put themselves in that karmic or contract to elevate and enlighten the entire planet around certain
Yeah.
humanitarian issues.
Yeah.
I'm just getting chills over my whole body. So I
Mhm.
hope that this resonates with people and that you understand my intention behind saying all of this and just all of my gratitude for everyone who stands up to speak out for this kind of abuse and trauma that's not okay. And I don't condone any of it. I have to say that as much as I just
Yeah.
feel, people need to hear that there is also some sort of divine plan behind it that we're now awake and aware of
Mhm.
things. So that's that contrast. And I've had it in my own life. I know you have. I know our listeners have had extreme amounts of trauma in their life. And I don't want to ever say that it's okay, but I want to say for myself, I'm a better person because of it, because it really did shape and form who I am today. And I wouldn't have changed it for the world. I have my
Mhm.
son, I have the awareness now and the spiritual evolution that I had to go through to see those shadow elements of me that were within me to
Yes.
work with them and find the self-love and worthy feelings that have brought me to this place in a very
Oh.
loving, supportive relationship. And I want to tell people this is what can be on the other side of that. Like
Mhm.
it's a
And
healing.
absolutely. And it's a hard concept for some people, I think, because trauma is so deep and wounding and terrible,
Painful.
painful and effective across so many layers of your cellular being and your spiritual being. But there's a rock tumbling element to life, to being
Yeah.
human. And since they haven't talked about gymnastics yet, it's that same thing of fall off the beam. You have to fall off the beam to appreciate when you don't fall off the beam,
And nobody wants you
you
to fall
know?
off the beam.
No, but
That's the thing. We're
no.
not saying that, but you have to fall off the beam.
Yes.
It's a crazy paradox.
Mhm.
But I like the word contrast because it's just so important to see. I wouldn't know what it feels like to be this empowered and this much love within my being if I didn't know the pain and
Mhm.
the sorrow of it not being there.
And I feel like this is where I want to remind everyone and myself and you of the totality of witnessing yourself, and when you're ready to let go of something, and when you're 9/10 ready to let go of something, and diving in a little deeper and saying, what is that last 1/10 of me that is maybe sabotaging myself from this unconditional love, because I still think I need it to be this certain level of enslavement or entrapment, because I
Or
still think I'm not worthy of it. And I'm like totally crying right now. But it's like there's something in us that's still stuck in the old paradigm, the old blueprint, the old ways.
and
And
it
so
is in
when,
our DNA. Honestly, I
yes,
believe that
yes.
we come in with this imprint. This blueprint is physically within us.
And that's just like, and we've talked about this before, you upgrade your phone, you upgrade your computer, upgrade your soul, upgrade your body. Do it with nutrition, do it with water, do it with laying on the earth, do it with fire, oh my gosh, do it with all the wind and the water and all the elements. And like keep upgrading your body and soul so that when you're ready to let go, you will be authentic, 100% ready. And then it's sustainable and you can stay inside of that alignment that you're craving, because we're all craving that. We were talking earlier about craving the truth. I crave the truth, and that's how we open this episode. I crave the truth, but I live in a society that doesn't. I live in a society that loves to hide the truth, that loves to sugarcoat everything. They put gravy on bad mashed potatoes. The potatoes still suck, people. Okay. The gravy might be good, but the potatoes still suck. So, like, sorry. like, let's get to the bottom of it, the foundation of it, and let's
Yes.
stop, tinkering around, so that's where I come into it. And I think it's just something you have to find in yourself and then stand in that, and only say, I'm going to have relationships with people that also crave the truth, that want to be honest, that want to go through the hard stuff, like together. Like, I'm not afraid of
Right.
having a man in my life that I'm not going to get along with all the time. Like, bring it on. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
you know let's talk about it, but let's get deeper. Let's figure it out. Let's dig up a little bit and go, oh, I didn't even realize that root was still there growing. We
Yeah.
have so
And
many analogies.
we fear bringing up the truth because we won't be accepted, we won't be loved
Mhm.
when we're honest.
Yeah.
We don't want to say push your honesty on people, throw in truth bombs that people might not be ready for. Like
Did you know? Oh my God, let me tell you.
it's very, very loving to just let it be sometimes
Yeah.
and let your own honesty and truth be enough for you without,
Mhm.
projecting it out into the world.
Yeah.
But what we're saying is be honest with yourself. truly seeing yourself is the biggest gift to
Yeah.
loving yourself and seeing where you can still be stuck in it.
I just see this, like, you walk into a relationship with this big list, like, these are all my truths. Here you go. It's like,
Here's my box
whoa,
of truths.
whoa, baby, back it up, honey.
Yeah. There's
Not quite like that.
grace involved, and
A little harmony, a little timing.
I don't know if you all know this yet, but we're both dancers. It's funny we don't use more dance analogies because I totally
We
wanted
can
to
start.
chime in earlier when you were saying how much you love all of this, fluidity and change, and I'm like, that's the dance. That is the
Yeah.
dance of life. And sometimes there is a pause, or like you retract within before you expand out, and it's this flow and fluidity. So just to plug Shelby's Monday morning jam dances,
Yes.
if anyone else wants to feel into that level of body awareness and excitement and flow.
Yes, 8:30 East Coast, Zoom. We'll drop the link.
Perfect.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
You do all that
I
stuff.
said it
You're the
last week.
fancy
I was
one.
going to put it on the website and I didn't have the link to do that. So we'll do it this week. It will be ready before Monday if anybody is super interested. It'll be a belly dancing, tribal belly dance route. Hopefully people catch on easily, but it's just going to be jamming, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what's exciting, Alicia, is this Saturday at the gym. I asked some of my drummer friends because it's spring, and I said I need you guys to come and drum, and we're just gonna do an African dance workshop for 75 minutes. And I'm terrible with advertising and stuff. I'm like, oh, just people will find out and they'll show up, and so I was talking to the drummers. I was like, I don't even care how many people come. I just want to feel the rhythm. I want to be in that space of the vibration. And as you were talking about pause, my lead drummer, he always talks about the pause, because drumming is all about the noise, da, 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 but he's like, no, no, no. It's about the pause in between.
In between.
And I love that. I love that, like, anticipatory, quiet, but like, oh, it's coming, it's coming. So yes to all of what you said. Yes. And there's your dance analogy.
Right. I needed
Kinda,
to stick
sorta.
it in there
Yeah.
before we close and end the
Yes.
topic. Is there anything we didn't touch on that we said we really wanted to bring up around this topic?
I think for me, it's just what is my goal in life is to be fluid, like you talk about the river. And yes, we have healthy boundaries on everything. I mean, every policy I make at the gym is for the benefit of the gym. It's not a condition. It's not a brick wall. It's a healthy boundary so that all the staff can exist in a good place.
It's supportive.
Yeah. And then inside of that, we get to flow as organically and honestly as we can all figure it out together. And
because it creates safety. And that's one of those things. It's not conditional to say, you can't yell at me like that. I'm thinking my own past and boundaries I need to put up, but I will say,
yeah,
I can't talk about this in that tone of voice. This isn't okay. I don't feel safe with this topic in that way. And then you find the boundaries that do feel safe and that work for everyone. And then you get to play and enjoy and discover, and it's so much better.
Yeah, there's just so much worry and doubt when you're in a relationship that has conditions. You second guess everything you say. Is it going to be interpreted correctly or incorrectly? Is it going to fall in the rules that have been laid out, or did I just overstep? And that's just a whole big, what's it called? A flag, a yellow flag, or what am I trying to say?
Red flag.
Red flag. Like, if you have to check yourself constantly, take that deep breath and ask yourself, what is the value of that relationship? Do you really need it? Are you able to step away? And of course, Alicia and I both know that a lot of times these are people that you love so much, you just have to set a clearer boundary and step back a little bit. I know not, some people you can be like, yeah, I'm done, and walk away. But some people you just have to shield up, put your colors out and say, I am going to be and my truth over here, and your foundation is clear, and take it day by day, but really witness the change that happens when you decide what your sovereignty is and what your truth. And what else am I trying to say here?
You said it beautifully, I think.
Okay.
That's exactly.
Well, thank you.
It is a day-to-day thing, and it does require us to notice the changes within. So those pauses are so important. And believing in, and I think what you said, trusting your own inner honesty and truth.
I've got one more gymnastics and thing. It's a story though. So we do a thing called bouquets at the end of the night. I think I've probably talked about it. And the girls will compliment their teammates because I'm trying to get them to witness each other. And last night I flipped it and I said, all right, you have to give your own bouquet to yourself. And the hands did not go up as quickly. And I said after a bit, I'm like, okay, I'm noticing that you guys are having a harder time complimenting yourselves. So dig a little deeper. You've been here for 3 hours. What did you really admire about your work ethic tonight, or your skill building, or your courage? And then boom, 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 it started to come up. But it was cool, to really help them learn that it's okay to honor yourself and compliment yourself. Like, because how easy is it to be like, Alicia, you're so stunning. But do I look in the mirror and think I'm so stunning? Well, I do. I'm just kidding. Not every day. Let me correct that. But there are times that I'm like, yeah, girl, you're working it.
I think we should all be able to say that. I definitely believe in self-affirmation. We talked about it, and that story reminds me, partly when I was meditating this morning, I was inspired by my teacher, Kyla, to ask the grateful part of myself, because I spend 5 minutes of my 20-minute meditation reflecting on what I'm grateful for. And I am usually grateful for everyone and everything outside of myself. And her question to me was, if that gratefulness part of myself had a message for me, what would it be? And the very beginning of my meditation, it was, be grateful for yourself. So I spent 5 minutes, instead of putting my gratitudes outside of myself, thinking of all the ways in which I believe in myself and I'm grateful for what I do and how I speak and how I show up and all the things that I've been through, that I'm grateful for my strength, and I would encourage everyone, if you are wanting to take another step towards unconditional love for yourself through listening to this episode and, what can I do right now? It would be to send that love and gratitude to yourself and give yourself the bouquet.
Yay. Yay. That's wonderful. Okay. I'm going to do that too.
Yeah. Let's make it
because I forgot.
practice.
Night.
Daily practice. And I think, everything is love. Love is a perspective. Gratitude is the way. And so may all of you have ease and grace through these lessons of love and shift your perspective to see the beauty and the love that you desire for yourself and for others.
Well, I love everybody. Yay. Thank you for listening.
Yes.
Thank you. I love you so much.
I love you too. I love you all. Thanks for listening.
Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.
Bye.